Let's officially start this show. My name is Tony Salas once again, Diesel Driveability Roundtable. Welcome to July 2022. So therefore, it's July 9th. What is it, the 19th? And in this case, we're going to talk about a few things. First of all, I'm going to quickie on L5P. Matthew is, hopefully Matthew's got his phone on. I see Matthew's logged in. Matthew, if you get on, obviously Matthew and I had some talks about this. But it's starting to become the common thing now with L5P. So the fuel system diagnosis, it's not easy. It's rather frustrating in a way. So let me first cover it, then we'll discuss it, and I'll tell you what's going on here with L5P. Again, for those of you who don't know what the L5P is, it's the Duramax. It is the light duty truck. Also, there is a medium duty version of it, which is called the the L5D. So in this case, we got that one. So if we look at a common rail, as you know, most of you may or may not know common rail pretty good. When we left the LML Duramax in 2016 and we went to 2017 with the L5P, so anything pretty much 17 and newer is an L5P Duramax V866. So if we look really closely at the system, obviously I'm not going to give you a full-blown class. I do have this presentation available on our on-demand courses, but you'll notice there's two fuel tanks right here. We got a transfer pump, which is number 15, and number 15 is transferring fuel over to the, as a matter of fact, let me zoom it to make you guys that have small screens, take it over to the primary tank, which is number 13 right here. And at that point from number 13, we see a lift pump. So like I have found from many guys that have been out there, especially in this trip I just took, the lift pump is located in the tank. So in this case, we transfer fuel from the lift pump in the tank over to the primary fuel filter. So if you're primarily, which is number 3, so if you're familiar with Duramax, Duramax has always been using one filter, so the L5P ain't any different. It's located underneath the chassis, usually somewhere, depending if it's a cutaway chassis or a pickup, but in this case, it's located roughly around where the fuel tank is at, so therefore it's all underneath. There's no more fuel filter like we saw on other models of Duramax, where it was in the engine compartment. So that's not what we're going to see there. Anyways, that's number 3. So in this case, you see lift pump pressure, and there's also a lift pump pressure sensor. And that lift pump pressure sensor and fuel temperature sensor are 4 and 5. And if we follow this arrow right here, you will see that it also goes to number 6, which is the indirect injector. So unlike the LML, the previous version of Duramax, the L5P has an indirect injector going straight to the injection pump. So with that said, that goes the injection pump. So therefore, the injection pump has always been getting some kind of lift pump pressure or suction, and this one definitely has a pressure. And then we have a indirect injector, not in the return. It is now part of the lift pump pressure. So therefore, they share that. So why are we saying that? Well, as we continue to talk about this, you're going to see that also that the high pressure side of that Denso HP4 pump is feeding fuel rail pressure to each rail, which in turn feeds the injectors, which are solenoid style, not piezo, solenoid style Denso injectors. And then we got our return coming back completely over to the tank. So what is so different? Well, what is so different is the fact that, you got your high pressure side, and in this case, you got your low pressure side. But on the high pressure side, you do have a spec. There is a return spec for the high pressure, or shall we say the pressure relief valve found on the fuel rail itself. So General Motors does give you a return spec for that. But where we have an issue here is diagnosing this right here. So when we look at it closely, look at number 16. Number 16 right there is actually well, that's actually a module. It's actually controlling your fuel pump control. So it's a fuel pump control module number 16. So it does work with the ECM, but it is pretty much a module that is designed to pulse width modulate in a way. It's a 3-phase pump, the lip pump itself. So the lip pump has varying pressure, shall we say, we can actually check, and I'll show you a scan tool view of that here in a bit. But here's the issue. And I will talk about it a little bit more as we move along here. But the issue is, how do I know I got a problem? And where do I have a problem on the lift pump section here? So if I'm diagnosing this and I got an issue, and what is the issue? Well, the issue is that the truck loses power under load. You do have a code set for you know, a P087, which is usually a low rail pressure code. So when you got a low rail pressure code, you know, your actual thing would be to actually take a look at the high pressure side here. So if we look at a high pressure side, this Denso common rail ain't no different like we dealt before with Bosch. So in this case, we can have a high return, and in this case, we can have a high pressure leak. And that could be, there's number 9 once again, which this guy, that's why I showed it to you, because this pressure relief valve can also be leaking excessively too. So, you know, you would ask yourself, I got a leak somewhere, or it could be an injector as a final cause. So I would think by now most of you should know that when we get a low rail pressure code, most of the time it is not the high pressure injection pump, which is number 10. So in this case, that's not the issue. Most likely it's a lift pump pressure volume issue, or B, we got an issue also with our in other words, high pressure leak at the high pressure side. So there, that's what we're looking at there. Okay. So with that said, that's what we're looking at there. So as we continue to look here, what about the low pressure side? Okay. This is where it gets challenging. And as I was working at 2 different shops, you know, one of the things we came across was what's going on here with our, you know, in other words, what's going on here with diagnosing. So let's say you got a low lift pump pressure issue. You got low lift pump pressure. I'm taking questions. Again, you got a fuel pump driver control module, which is number 16. You got an indirect injector. Obviously, you got fuel going into the injection pump. And obviously, you got the pump in the filter. So how do you know where your problem is at? You know, so and in the past, it was just easy as checking lift pump pressure and volume, right? See what's going on there. And but then again, we got too many other players here. We got number 14, the pump itself, and then we got the fuel pump driver module. Okay, you all coming around with this? So hopefully you are. And in this case, the fuel pump is mounted in the, oops, come on, baby, don't get changing on me. I got a real sensitive mouse here, sorry. But in this case, when we look at this very closely, let me move this over because it's blocking my view. The fuel pump is mounted primary fuel tank. And again, the ECM supplies voltage to the fuel pump driver control module for 30 seconds. So like any pump, or any lift pump system, whether it being diesel, gasoline, it does do a prime of 30 seconds every time you turn the key on. So in this case, while this voltage is being received, right? While this voltage is being received, the fuel pump driver control module sends a serial data signal to the ECM containing the desired fuel pump speed. So the fuel pump driver control module actuates the brushless fuel pump by means of a high power 3-phase signal. Okay, so therefore that's what we see going on. So we got a 3-phase signal. So when we look at a wiring diagram, you're going to look at this right here. Obviously, you got your fuel pump driver module, which is this guy right here. You know, we got this going on right here. So in this case, we see our A6C, which is our complete fuel pump and level sensor assembly in the tank. So we got 3 phases. So there's 3 phases. There's your ground going pump driver module. And then you could see your CAN communication going up to the ECM. And here is your power coming in. So you got a lot of power coming in, a lot of issues going on here. So the question is, again, we have an issue with the lift pump, if there's an issue with the lift pump, right? So I spent some time with the GM service info, and I need to spend more time, to be honest with you, because I need to figure out how they're approaching it versus how we decided to approach it. So the problem is, okay, let me skip a few slides here. And as a matter of fact, as we look at this, we got the ECM. The ECM will send obviously a message over to the fuel pump control module. I call it the fuel pump driver control module, which is K111. ECM is K20, and the A6C is obviously your fuel pump, and that's inside the tank. So the question is, again, how do we know we got a problem going on here? Because again, the problem is on an 18, it's an 18 L5P. Now this truck has about 120,000 miles on it. Truck starts up fine, idle's great, pressure's all okay. But again, it actually loses power under load. Now you do see a code for the fuel rail pressure, and obviously the P087, and then you got a lift pump pressure. So in this case, you observe both the fuel rail pressure and the lift pump pressure on the scan tool, and both will drop at the same time. Okay, so right off the bat, you're like, okay, let's think about this. You know, let's go back over here. Yes, I am moving around. That's the nice thing about the round table. So here we go again. Let's look at the whole complete system. So if we got a high pressure leak, will that affect lift pump pressure? Vice versa. If the lift pump pressure drops, volume is low, will that also cause a low rail pressure code to be set on the high pressure side? I'm taking input. What do you guys think? Comments are welcome. Hello? Hello, hello, hello? Don't sit there in front of that monitor. Come on.
I would think it would set off a code for you.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is you got both codes set. So, and you can drive it and you can watch it on the scan tool and you will see the pressure drop on the lift pump side, and you will also see pressure drop on the high pressure side. So you look at your desired actual rail pressure and you'll see that drop too. So in this case, we were kind of in, scratching our heads. Well, do I have a high pressure leak? Do I got something going on with the high pressure side? But, rules have always been stated that in order to diagnose a common rail, you have to first confirm that you got good lift pump pressure. But when I look at the lift pump itself, now let me skip forward now here. I can now see on the scan tool, for those of you who have never done an L5P, if you look closely here, and hopefully you can see my mouse, you got your desired and actual rail pressure you can view. These are pits. And in this case, you can also view the lift pump pressure. Okay, and there's your sensors right there. So in this case, you can watch what the desired pressure is for the lift pump speed. Hell, you can even look at the fuel pump speed command. You could see what the speed is, what's going on with it. So you got a lot of data. Up here, you can see the test status of the phases, of the 3 phases, and also the regulators there too. So in this case, you got a lot you can see here. But the thing is, none of that was being helpful because the problem would occur too fast on the truck, meaning that in this case, we were trying to figure out why is it that this truck was losing power. Again, we saw low lift pump pressure. Again, we saw low rail pressure as well. So in this case, you observe them both, like I said on this slide. So both readings will drop at the same time when under load. So what and how do we check? So in this case, a lot of guys are looking at this going, okay, the ECM is monitoring, working with the fuel pump driver module, which is K111, and obviously controlling the pump, which is the whole assembly is A6C. Now, something new that you guys may not have known, that General Motors is now actually using these alphanumeric numbers to actually describe the components themselves. That's why I'm using them now. So obviously K20 is ECM, K111 is a fuel pump driver module, and in this case, the sending unit pump assembly is A6C. Everybody see that? So hopefully you got that there. So with that said, let's go back to the question, what and how do we check? Because, I'm looking at the data, we can see the pressure drop. And the thing is, Matthew, I don't know if he's on yet, but Matthew was one of the ones that led the run on this because he's one of the first that I saw this same problem. So Matthew can tell you about, and he's not here, but in this case, he can tell you about the bulletin that was actually out there, which is this right here. There was a bulletin on this issue. And if you look to the right, there's all the codes that it addresses along with fuel pressure regulator, fuel rail pressure sensor. And in this case, there was a connector problem. So obviously the first thing we went after was the connector, as you can see there on the lower right. If you can't see it, let me blow it up over. So again, there is a bulletin. The problem is that when we looked at the bulletin and when you replace it, it's got a lot of dielectric gel on it. So it looked like on this truck that we were working on that the connector had been replaced, but regardless, the shop, they wanted us to do it anyway. So we did the connector because that same symptom that I just told you where we lose intermittent power, again, drop lift pump pressure and also drop high rail pressure can be attributed to this connector again. So in this case, it's a problem.
Tony,
so there is, yeah.
Is that the connector? It's saying there at the fuel pressure sensor.
Yeah.
Is that at the pump or up on the rail?
On the rail.
Or is it that one by the filter?
No. This is the one on the rail. So
okay.
On the passenger side on the rail. So
okay.
The rail on the passenger side. That's what they're telling you. So.
And then the other thing is, Tony, you mentioned, could you pull up mode 6 data when the code is set to give you an indication where everything was, or did it still happen too fast?
It's something you can try, but at that time I did not have access to mode 6 data.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
So my Snap-on was not behaving to give me that info. Yes, sir.
Tony.
Who's that?
It's Matthew here.
Matthew. Where you been, buddy? I've been waiting for you.
Was
All
on
right.
here.
Okay, go
So
ahead,
just
Matthew.
wanted to interject with this whole thing because obviously we had ran into it as well.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
So couple things. One is on that bulletin, it would appear by that picture that there's a lot of corrosion or whatever like that, and that may be the case on some cases. But the unit we had here, you really didn't see a problem physically with the connection of note. Similar like we have seen with the LOY injector connector issues, as well as now the L5P injector connectors. Also, you don't really see a physical problem per se, but there is an issue there. And of note too, you'll probably get to, and whatever is the guys may see that it's a 4-pin connection. There is it is a two pressure. It's a sensor 1, sensor 2 built into the same sensor. And when I took a scan, I actually recorded the failure we were seeing here, and you could see the pressure drop on both the low pressure, like you said, and on pressure 1 and 2, dropping away when ours would act up intermittently.
Correct. So the thing is in the back of your head. So you've done this, right? And the problem is, and Matthew can also further tell you, I'll give you Matthew's version of his scenario, and I'll give you my scenario that I had was dealing with too as well. So let me backtrack here. So how do you confirm the issue? Possible causes. Let's look at the possible causes. And Matthew, you can relate here, throw in your 2 cents worth if you so choose, is that, you did swap a fuel pump driver module, which we did too as well. We actually luckily had another truck, so we just swapped the driver modules. And by the way, there was a difference between a cutaway chassis and the pickup, we found out. But in this case, the driver module could be the issue, intermittent problem within the driver module. So the thing is, what really, irked me was the fact that, I don't want to be swapping parts to figure out stuff, so what can I do to check the fuel pump driver module? So let's start with that one first. Let's not jump to the high gun here. Let's go back to this wiring diagram again. And in this case, the fuel pump driver module here, oops. Let me get back to my diagram. Oops, I went too far. Sorry, my hand is shaking today. I'm low on sugar. All right, so in this case, when you look at the wiring diagram, obviously, when you look at a fuel pump driver module, you're going to be apt, especially, Matthew can tell you, where's this puppy located at, Matthew? This driver control module.
So in our case, it was right behind the primary fuel tank.
Yeah, so it's exposed to the elements, okay? And in this case, when you look at the pump driver module, which is this K111 dotted, and not dotted, but dashed box right here, you're gonna see we got fuel powers and grounds located here. We got battery power here, ignition power here. We got another power here. So you got a series of fuse. So as these trucks are getting to age a little bit already, where we got 5 to 6 years on them, we're going to see some issues going on here. But just make note as you look at the diagram, you got an F66 UA fuse, a F34 UA fuse, F21 UA fuse. And this is all for your transfer pump. So that does not apply. So this is your transfer pump here. Do not use this only if the truck has factory dual fuel tanks. That's what this is for right here. But you also got your ground going here to G121. So it is a wise idea to confirm the powers and grounds going to the fuel pump driver module. Now, I don't doubt that the pump itself is not monitored. It is monitored very well through the phase circuits. But the problem is, always remember that we're only monitoring, again, the electrical integrity, but what about the mechanical integrity of the pump? See? So in this case, we don't know mechanical. It's like the argument I used to have with people about IPRs, for example, on 6.0, so you can understand what I'm trying to say, use this as an example, is that, you can electrically test a solenoid, and the computer can check the circuit of the solenoid of the IPR, but it can't physically see what the piston is doing, and it can actually get sticky. Same thing here. The pump could be actually, be not actually, what's the word I'm looking for? In other words, in the pump itself, there could be a restriction in the tank. There could be trash in the tank where, again, it is actually dropping pressure going from the lip pump over to the high pressure side. So electrically, I feel that the fuel pump driver module is doing a good job of monitoring those phase circuits. But again, it doesn't tell us mechanically that the pump is doing a good job. So those of you that haven't seen a P21A6 code, if you ever looked at it, one of the key things they want you to do is to actually put a test slide on pin 18 just to see if you're getting a signal. But this would be only good, as the top of the chart says, this would only be good for intermittent crank or no start issues. Because obviously the scenario we had, the truck fires up fine, it idles fine, it runs great until you put her under a hard load. Was that the scenario with you, Matthew?
Yeah, so it was under intermittently under load was whenever the problem would show up, and it was not continuous either. It would just very intermittent, very sporadic. You could be driving along, good power, and it wasn't like it was just when you underload. At times underload, but not all the time.
So in this case, yeah, that's the scenario. So this only applies with, in this case, where you actually are, you know, you got a nose crank, no start. However, though, if the truck is running and it loses signal going to pin 18, yeah, that could be a problem. So logic would tell you, hey, I'm going to physically see how the wiring is going to the connector. So that was eliminated too when we looked underneath the truck itself. So obviously, again, you got to confirm this. So let me get to the point here, and then I'll come back to this again. Yes, I'm moving around today. So what we did was we actually were really frustrated because we're trying to determine, are we losing lift pump pressure? So in our scenario, what we did, actually, it turns out these techs that I was working with had that new Snap-on, by the way. They were showing it off, and I thought I'd show it to you guys. Actually, I just let my Snap-on guy know that I want this too, because they had a universal new kit that's wireless and works with Bluetooth. So in this case, what we were able to do is take his phone, which he was already Bluetooth attached to this wireless unit pressure switch, and we physically actually attached a lift pump pressure gauge going over into the lift pump pressure inlet. As you know, there's quick connects like GM has always put in on the driver's side. And sure enough, what we did was we load tested and went ahead and saw the lift pump pressure actually did drop. So we did confirm that lift pump pressure was going bye-bye. So in essence, what we diagnosed was the pump itself was the problem. So we definitely had a pump issue. So the moral of the story on our scenario, not unlike Matthew's, is that our scenario was, you know, even though all electrically everything looks fine, you know, mechanically the pump had a problem. So unfortunately, I had to leave by the time they got the pump order and coming, but you know, I did confirm that the pump was the issue. So then again, I ran into another one at another shop, same scenario. But in this case, you may want to take interest in still, because at first when I looked at the L5P, and I guess I should correct myself, because I said, well, now that you can monitor pump speed, lift pump speed, you can monitor also the lift pump pressure, you should not be having to hook up a gauge. But we had to confirm this to make sure it was an electronic problem. So in this case, it was the lift pump itself. Now, Matthew himself, and that's why we need to look at these possible causes. Is this always going to be the issue? The answer is no. Because can we also have a leaky indirect injector? You know, in time, we may see a leaky indirect injector. So in this case, that can maybe stick open or start leaking and lose lift pump pressure too as well. It may not be, and as I predict, as I'm looking at this, and you guys can give me your input too, it may not be, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I go not as prevalent, because if it's leaking fuel, it's going to actually cause the catalyst to get really warmed up. So in this case, we may see that also accompanied with it. So, but obviously we could have sensor issues like we already said the high pressure rail pressure sensor is actually a 2-in-1 sensor. We also got a sensor on the pump itself, which is again measuring that lift pump pressure itself. So one of the key things I've heard people talk about out there is you can actually disconnect the sensor and it'll default. So by defaulting, you're making it go above 60 pounds of pressure, and you're going to see if that actually works or not. So we did that. So that's why I'm adding this to this, is that what you can also do to confirm that you are not dropping, you know, pressure is, let me draw the scenario. Don't confuse you, because I'm kind of getting myself bumbled up. Sorry. In this case, what can happen is Okay, we put the gauge on, we test drive, or we load up the engine, boom, the pressure drops, lift pump pressure drops. Okay, we see that. Okay, now before I condemn the pump, let's disconnect the pressure sensor and let it run on default, which means it it rises above 60 PSI, and let's see if the pressure dumps. If it dumps again, then you know for sure it's a lift pump itself. So just make a note of that. But unfortunately, we also now, like Matthew had said, and I just read an article too, and I talked to a tech, when was it, a few days ago, where we're having issues with number 4 injector, and also we see connectors, like Matthew said. And Matthew, have you seen a certain which number injector connector, or is it random that we're seeing those connector issues?
So for us, I think we've had 2 trucks already now. It's been number 4, but I've talked to some other shops. I think I've seen some other locations also, but it seems like number 4 is pretty common.
Yeah, number 4 seems to be the issue. That's what we're hearing too. So in this case, word to the wise. So if you're making note of that, so I thought I mentioned that. So definitely want to obviously check the connector. Obviously get yourself a gauge and hook it up, and definitely confirm that you do not have a real pressure problem too. But also logic would tell you, hey, let's look at the connectors, both on the rail pressure sensor and on the number 4 and the injector perspectives themselves. And here's the funny thing, and Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, since you experienced this like me, we did not have or have seen issues where number 4 injector code was set, circuit code. Did you have a circuit code on yours?
I'd have to go back to the repair ticket to verify 100% on that. Yeah, I can't say for clearly without looking at that.
So yeah, there you go. So thank you, Matthew. So there you go. And that's what we're trying to say here, guys, is that, we got this going on. So definitely watch out for this problem with the L5P, because eventually through time, will we see problems with the driver control modules? Yes, we will. But it's, I guess the jury's still out, but it seems not as common as we think it is. And some of us actually hit the panic button and said, oh, let's put the driver module in. Oh, that didn't fix it. But let's try to stick to the basics before we start condemning modules. So makes sense. Matthew, you like to add anything else, buddy? Or anybody like to add anything else?
Sorry, I was on mute there. No, I think that covers it. So principally what you're saying, this other truck you ran into the similar problem was a continuous low power, or as soon as they would call for power, they were running into this issue. Is that what I'm understanding?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in this case, it was a pump. We did not have a problem with the number 4 injector, or the rail, but we did replace the connector anyways, because a CYA, cover your butt kind of thing. So we kind of want to do that. So because we know it was a bulletin, might as well update it. So that's what we did. So
Tony, another question?
yeah, go ahead.
That number 4 connector, can you attribute that to heat, or because it's near the firewall? I mean, will it give you any indication why that connector is coming apart or failing?
I haven't really had time to give it much thought of why the cause yet, but
Okay. That's fine.
Matthew, you got your take on it since you dealt with it? Matthew?
Sorry, on mute again. I guess I would say that principally you've already kind of indicated that you're seeing wiring issues, even like on the other GM applications. The wiring's just not probably ideally, the pins and stuff probably are not as ideally heavy enough. You said you're even aware of on some of the LM2 engines that are seeing some of the same type of issues with wiring connections you're hearing. So maybe that's more of that. But why specifically number 4? That's hard to say, because that's obviously on the open side of the engine. It's not underneath the heat of the EGR and stuff. You would think that would probably show up more on that something there, but it seems not so much at this point. Again, there's not to say that hasn't occurred there, but more common here on this number 4.
Very good. So thought I'd talk about that. So yeah, so therefore, please make a note of that. So you got all the possible causes. So a lot going on there that you don't want to accidentally misdiagnose there. So again, injector 4 connector, your lift pump itself, but also you could have issues in the future. So it all depends how many miles the truck will have, how old it is. That's going to tell, how long it will be. I guess I could say the jury's still out on the most common cause, but right now, definitely lift pumps, they're at the mercy of the quality of fuel that you got in that tank, whatever additives you're putting in there, and the sensor connectors and the wiring. And lastly, you want to go after, as a quick check, go after that number 4 connector going to the injector. So remember, odds and evens on GM. So therefore, number 1, 3, and 5, and 7, 2, 4, 6, and 8 are on the driver side. So therefore, pay attention to that. So make it sound good? Anything else? So that's my take on what I was discussing. So I just took up about 35 minutes of this time here. So hopefully it'll help you guys diagnose that. So definitely want to pay attention to that. though. Definitely. While I was also working out there, I bumped into a few other trucks. Oh my God, back east, here in Nevada, you got to understand that we're restricted on, you can't get away in California. You definitely can't get away with any kind of, deletes of any kind. It's very hard. And if you do, you better live in a county where there's no smog inspections, because we have smog inspections here in Clark County. So therefore, working out there, one of the frustrations that I was running into is like, half the trucks out there were all, actually 3/4 of the trucks were all deleted. So, that's your business, whatever, law, whatever. But the bottom line is, when you're dealing with a delete tune, and I know I mentioned this and I'm going to say it again, is watch the quality of tune you put in if you're doing that, because my God, these tunes, they were not setting codes. I mean, this L5P, for example, had a tune in it, and it wasn't setting any kind of codes because of the fact it was turned off by whoever did the tune itself. So as much as we see tunes out there and they're deleting, some certain tuners or the programmers that are doing it, they're turning off codes too as well to keep the light off. So watch out for that, because you're like, why didn't it have a code? Well, if it's deleted, it may have turned off those codes, excuse me. So therefore, those tests were turned off. So therefore, you won't know you have a problem. So it gets rather frustrating. So that was another reason too that we had to hook up a gauge too, because it was all turned off. So be aware of that. So I think some of you will agree, if you've been working with deleted trucks, that could be an issue. And always remember, with deleted trucks, is that, does that tune also have any kind of learned abilities? In other words, that they turn that off too, because there's adaptive learns that these systems will do. So be aware of that too as well. So okay, so any other things you'd like to discuss? Lee, you got anything? You got something? Okay, put you on hold there, Lee. So what's your take here? You have the floor, sir.
That's really interesting. Some of the prior meetings we've had over the years, Tony, those connectors, and you just got to pull it apart and look, like you said, with all the grease. It was on that NOx sensor on 6.7s. I still see that probably every other month. Those 4 connectors from the NOx module up to the PCM, you got to tear apart those connectors and look at every one. Surprise. I found the green stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
All the time.
But you said you had an issue. What was an issue you'd like to share?
Oh, on that 6.7?
Yeah.
Tony, do you really want to get into that?
Yeah, I want to get into it. I've been Duramaxed out here, and I got 6.7s coming up here. So let's hear it.
Is there a way for me to post up a video? Because you'll get a kick out of it.
Oh,
Is there a way to do that?
not right now. I would have had to have it, then I could share it to you. So, but tell us about it though.
Well, like I described earlier, this is a 6.7. I think it's a 16 or a 15 or whatever. And he put a set of injectors in it, and he had one injector, and in the video you can see it. But what we were talking about, Tony, is he has all the return lines on these piezo injectors disconnected. And he has one that looks like, one of the kids' squirt guns. It's just running out, just nonstop, one injector. So my question is how is this engine running with the return lines disconnected? I thought in all my training and discussions and meetings and all that, you had to have return pressure to make those 6.7 piezos work.
Let's see, who does injectors in here?
Carl.
Is Carl in-house?
Carl was.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah,
I hear
we
you,
can hear
Carl.
you. Hi, Carl.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I can hear you,
So
Carl.
the deal with piezos, as long as there's fluid in the injectors, there's a chance that that will still run. So once it's loaded. Now, the problem comes up is when you run out of fuel and the injector empties. That's typically when you get the problem with the injector won't open. The hydraulic coupler can't actually engage with no liquid in the injector. So if that helps you out, answer that question a little bit. It can run with that disconnected, not preferably, but it will make enough pressure to keep fluid in that hydraulic coupler.
And he could have taken them off real quick, Carl, or whatever. But what he was trying to do is he believed he had a leaky injector and blowing off those return lines. And he did. I just thought that was a very strange way to diagnose which injector is leaking.
Yeah,
Because
not a
typically,
preferred way.
typically, if you have a leaker, even with the 50, 60 PSI, you pull off that return side and you're going to see one dribbling.
Yeah, they have a kit for their piezos to put a pressure retention valve on, the same one that the Duramax uses, to hold pressure back in those systems. All the other ones typically, like Ford will use a throttle hole or something like that. But either way, it's a restricted type of way of holding fluid back into that injector.
Good. All right.
Why, Carl, if I may ask, let me hear your take on it, is that we also had, I haven't gotten back to him yet. I got a message saying that this guy on a 6.7 also, he was having they had replaced the return lines. And upon replacing the return lines, it blew off one of the returns again. So his problem was he was blowing off return lines and after replacement of the return lines. What's your take on that, sir?
You got a plug in the system. There's a plug in that
That's what I
return.
figured. That's what I figured. Yeah.
Because I've had that a
So-
couple of times, Tony, and
Okay.
you'll play hell finding it.
Typically, any location where we might find it?
I found it on the other side. That line that goes onto that barb connection, for some reason, when you shove that barb on, some of that rubber casing on the interior was
Mhm.
plugging up the line, going to the next injector.
Okay, that's good to know.
But
Yeah, because
we,
I had a message on, I gotta get back to that guy, but
we-
he
we
said he was going,
replaced
but he
that.
said it was running though, so.
And the other thing that I'll see, Tony, is depth contamination. You'll get the crystals in that return side, and then you never know where it is.
And again, I'll reiterate to some of you guys, I know I said this before, Lee just confirmed it, is that when you're testing fuel, you may want to buy the tester also from AccuStrips, which tests for depth fluid in the fuel. So make it a habit to start buying that, because when you come across these kind of issues, you're not going to know, because how contaminated it is contaminated with depth. Some of them you got a whole crap load of depth. Some of them you don't have a whole lot of depth in the fuel. So word to the wise, get those test strips to test for, again, depth fluid in the fuels. So good point. Thank you, Carl. So
And
Anything
yes,
else?
thank you, Carl.
any other things going on, gentlemen? I'm listening. Matthew, you usually chip in some diagnostics in there. What do you got?
Yeah, I do, but I did wonder, Tony, if you wouldn't mind sharing. You told me that on your trip you had another tidbit about a 6.4 also. Do you mind sharing what that might have been?
Oh God, I forgot that one. 6.4. This 6.4, and this goes back to the old Mitch spray paint test. They had done the motor, turbos, they did everything. I mean, except for injectors and injection pump, because they couldn't justify. So we went on a test drive, and the thing is, it wouldn't go over 21 pounds of boost. You would get about 21 pounds of boost. So it had good power, but not great power, if you know what I'm saying. So we were limited at about 20 to 21 pounds of boost. That was it. So it didn't quite have the good power. Transmission shift, great. Everything was good. So in this case, upon checking everything, and this truck was deleted too. So therefore, one of the things I told them to do is, like, they had the infrared gun, that snap-on infrared gun. Again, another great tool that you can use. And in this case, we were looking at the temps. They were putting it under max load power, braking it. And I didn't like the technician with the other technician actually load testing the truck with him underneath it, but he got underneath into that exhaust, and especially going on the outlet of the exhaust manifold and the up pipes. And we weren't seeing no more than 410, 405 degrees. So in this case, everything led to injectors. I go, it's got to be injectors. Your rail pressures were good. Everything was good. So, and in this case, luckily we had another 6.4, so I can show the guys, and easily that truck was running fine with great boost, and also had a tuner too as well. In this case, we were hitting 480 degrees on the exhaust. So again, that goes back to understanding that you got to be careful of those, aftermarket or, generic reman injectors, because what happened, what was the fix, was we had bad injectors. So in this case, you're like saying to yourself, well, why was the injectors? Because whoever did the reman on it, did not properly adjust the lift or the travel lift of that nozzle. So it was good, it was delivering, but not adequate fuel. And that usually is the nozzle travel that it has, So in this case, it was all calibrated wrong. So watch out for that, So that was that one. So thought I'd share that one with you, because it was marginal power, meaning that you had boost. The ones that I have seen before, pretty much did not have no power at all. I mean, just, you barely got 2 pounds, 3 pounds of boost. That's it. But this one had a good 2021. It just wasn't reaching max boost, So with the tuner, that thing should have been hitting between 25 to 28, easy a boost. And we were just a little shy low. And they were ready to go after the turbo. They were ready to, do other stuff. But in reality, they didn't think it was injectors. So again, another reason why to use an infrared gun. But if you're trying to compile temperatures, and that's what we learned on that 6.4, is we want to see at least, minimum of 480 degrees, under load, fully warmed up, and, keep that in mind, because we, on the truck that had the problem with those injectors, we couldn't get no more than 410. So make sense? So there you go, Mr. Matthew. Any questions on that? No? Boy, it got quiet all of a sudden.
Okay,
All right.
back to you there, Tony. Yes, I hear you on that. So apparently what I'm hearing you say, this engine that was installed, someone had put in some reman injectors along with the engine, and these reman injectors were not up to stuff, is what
You
I'm
can say
hearing.
that. You can say that, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's why I tell people, if it's cheap, it's because it's cheap.
Yeah.
So be careful about that there. So,
Yep.
all right, very good.
So I'll share with you a couple things that we've had going on around here. I had put out to the forum a couple days ago, was dealing with a PACCAR PX 767 Cummins engine that I had the question about some calibration. I don't know if I really went into a lot of detail there, what the issues were, but we had a scenario where the customer had he was having some derates from the SCR system. I'm trying to look real quick if I have the notes on the actual codes that we were getting on the Cummins Insight. But bottom line, what was happening was it was saying that mechanically the injector, the SCR dosing injector, was mechanically reaching its limit. And so we decided we're going to pull down the injector and do a quantity. I think, Tony, I might have reached out to you on finding out what that quantity was. And it actually passed that quantity, which was 85 to 115 milliliters in 6 minutes of that pulsing of the quantity. So, and we did at 3 different intervals, which that's what the Cummins service info said to do. Long story short, I just talked to the customer again this morning, verify a software update. We saw that we knew there was some software updating that was there, and it with the latest software seems to have resolved that problem. Ironically, when we went to calibrate that thing, apparently Cummins had done a campaign change on this. An original ECM code listed still on Cummins website did not reflect the latest calibration that was actually in the vehicle. So maybe those who work on those mid-range engines know a little bit more about that. But when that original calibration, instead of updating it, the calibrator went back to the original Cummins site and pulled down that calibration. Well, that created some trouble. So we got back to the updated version for the campaign, and as far as we can tell, that has solved it. So just a little something we ran into with that 6.7 engine. One other thing wanted to share too, Tony, you share about your story about that 6-liter you went to California for with not enough oil in.
Oh, that one. That
yeah.
old story. Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually have another one here that went to the opposite end of the spectrum with a 6-liter. So we had a customer who brought us a 04 1/4, so the early style 6-liter here, that they had went all over this themselves to put a aftermarket diesel site high pressure pump on this thing. It was the aluminum style pump. They had put O-rings and various other things in this thing, trying to deal with an ICP system problem, and for a while had it solved, but they were running into a scenario this thing was still dying on them. And what we had discovered, or I mean, what they brought to us, they were just kind of at the end of the rope with it, and brought to us and had the valve cover still off it. And we started doing some looking to see if we could find anything. No, we didn't even find any leaks per se. So we ended up putting the truck back together, went down the road, and sure enough, this truck within 10 minutes or so, it was stalled and it was losing ICP. And I was kind of scratching my head a little bit to what's going on with this thing. And in the process of time, we pulled the oil cap, and we had a puff, puff, puff coming out of us. Oh my! I said, on top of this thing, the engine must be shot. Well, upon further investigation, to my neglect, I guess, what we discovered, we decided we're going to put a low pressure gauge on, because we told the customer, hey, you know, there's a problem here deeper in this thing. Here we discovered that the low pressure oil pressure was dropping away. It was warming up too. Well, what we had made the mistake of is we hadn't checked the oil level as thoroughly as we should. And bottom line was we had crankcase dilution. It was diluting the oil, and within a matter of minutes, it would actually drop the low pressure away and obviously affect high pressure. And also so much oil fuel mixture in a crankcase that it was literally making it appear as though it had a blow-by issue, when really and truly, I guess all the sloshing around in there, because once we drained all that out, but got fresh oil in it, the seeming blow-by problem went away, and so did the dying problem. So we have had, in rare occasions, internal injector O-rings that would cause a problem like this, because the external O-rings, we pulled them out, the customer had already done them, that wasn't the issue. But kind of the opposite here, too much oil creating a problem compared to the lack of oil. So just a scenario. And as I got to thinking about this, we had a vehicle like this a couple of years ago, or a year or two ago, that it was doing some strange stuff similar, and the customer ended up taking the vehicle. And I really wonder if that wasn't our scenario there too.
In other words, you were aerating the oil from too much oil in there, so the crank was just beating it up. So,
right. Plus, on top of that, the viscosity was dropping off and causing a pressure drop on the low pressure side, affecting high pressure too.
there you go. Very good. Good to know. So it was the injector O-rings in it.
Yeah. So I would say it probably was thin diluted oil coming. We didn't actually disassemble the injectors, but internally in behind the knowing this because we have built 7.3 injectors and have had 6-liter injectors apart. In on the injector body, the case that goes around the outside of the case nut that holds the nozzle and group together to the body, there's an internal O-ring in there that can harden and flatten over time and start pushing fuel into the crankcase.
Alex actually mentioned in the chat window here that thin oil diluted, he has watched ICP desired raise to max until it finally died. So yeah, it's not a new thing. I guess Alex has also seen a similar issue too as well. So you're right. So therefore we ought to be checking. I remember teaching Duramax LB7 years ago, where we actually did the dilution test. And those of you who never heard of it, simple as taking a droplet of oil from the dipstick, put it on a white paper valve, see if a ring forms around the oil droplet, and that'll tell you got dilution going on there as a quick check. So food for thought for those of you that don't know there. So old trick there. Thank you, Alex, for the comment. Matthew, thank you for that scenario. Good to know. All right. Any other things, Matthew, or anybody else? Any other issues? Where am I on time? Oh, yeah, we're good time. So any other issues? Any other things going on in the world of diesel, light duty or medium duty, or eventually we should be getting into heavy duty repair? Anything else going on?
Tony, I'll go
No.
give the other guys some chance to talk, but I will throw this in just to kind of recap on what you're talking about in terms of when people have tuners on and affecting outcome. We just had a truck in here recently too. The customer was complaining. It was a 2011 model Ram, fairly low miles. And he was complaining that his exhaust brake was intermittently not working. We drove the truck. The truck did have a tuner already on it when it came here. It had been somewhere else, had been deleted some time ago, etc. And we went and drove the truck, and my techs thought the exhaust brake was working okay. Finally, the customer said, well, hey, you learned anything on this? And I said, well, so far we haven't been able to get it backed up on our test drives. I said, what we have seen some intermittent actuator problems that will occasionally set, and being it was tuned, would we actually have, be setting some of those faults? Long story short, I suggested to him, I said, we could put an actuator on as long as the turbo is free, which he agreed to, and we went ahead and did. Really didn't make any difference to the thing. Bottom line is we felt like that the next thing the customer really should be doing is, adjusting his tuning, because sometimes that brake seemed to work good and the next time not so well. And just kind of recapping on your thought that, we got to sometimes back up with what kind of programming's there. Even had a scenario here. We got I think what that one is a 16 model, I think, Ram out here that somebody brought to us. It's been tuned and all that type of thing. And they have it for going to a auto lot. They bought for reselling it. And they said, just check this thing over, see how it is. We want to make sure it's okay. Well, we got it here, and I noticed that it seemed like that rail pressure was elevated at idle. You really didn't see it on the scan tool. So we went through a few things, even did a rail pressure override test, making sure return was fine, etc. And it bottomed the whole noise and rattling, etc. intermittently boiled down to tuning.
Yeah. Okay, good point. Yeah, tuning sucks. Aftermarket, a lot of these tuners out there, they suck. I'm sorry, they do. They're awful. What they turn off. So it seems like, they're just trying to get a tune will delete everything, but the problem is they don't know the effects of what it does to fueling, the drivability, the transmission shifts, and so on with it. So it gets on my nerves. But all right, good point. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. Any other things? Eric, you want to throw some 2 cents worth on what you're doing with the garage diesel media? Am I saying that right, Eric? Eric, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, just getting some stuff done, listening here. Some great information. I took some notes today, so really good information for me, because I've actually been getting a call from a friend in Alaska asking about a 2013 Duramax and a 2017 Duramax and trying to do stuff to it. And he's like, well, what kind of parts can I get here? What do I need to do here? What do I need to do there? And I'm like, Well, I said, some of the stuff you're just gonna have to bring to the shop. He said, well, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, well, I understand that Alaska is pretty remote with a lot of stuff, but I'm like, there's only certain things I can do without being there. And you guys can attest to this. You can help somebody over the phone to a certain extent, but you can't really do everything for them without having the vehicle there or to look at it and physically verify everything. So it's really tough to do. So, but this is good information. I'm actually going to invite him in here and have him get a hold of you, Tony, to try to start attending these roundtables for good information for him to learn for some of that stuff, because he does come across a lot of the different vehicles up there in Alaska where he's working. So I think it would be beneficial for him and to learn from Matthew and Carl and other people in here as well as you, Tony, and stuff like that to learn about those things as he's being out there in the middle of nowhere. So it's pretty cool. So.
All right. I appreciate that. Yeah, tell them to get on roundtable. If you guys know anybody like to join us on the roundtable, they're welcome to. So definitely want to do that. So
Yeah. And as far as Diesel Garage Media, you're close. You had them all of them there. They were just a little different, but Diesel Garage Foundation. Last month we were in Alaska for an event, and we were able to get out a scholarship for a trade school scholarship at NIT, Northern Industrial Training, for a diesel technician to try to help have a direct impact on the diesel industry, which is absolutely amazing. We're working on getting more funding for more scholarships to give out. If you guys want to check it out, check out dieselgaragefoundation.org. Also, we have a really sweet computer system from Diesel Laptops. It's the Tech's on-road and off-road computer system that they donated to the Diesel Garage Foundation. If you look at it, it's about a $99 or almost a $10,000 system that they're giving away with all the training and everything else that they're doing. And we're actually have raffle tickets for that. The raffle tickets are $280 each, and everything goes to the scholarship fund for the Diesel Garage Foundation. We started out with 100 tickets. We got 90 tickets left to get out there, and we'd like to get that out to somebody that can help their customers and utilize that platform and that system, because it does on-road and off-road diesel, marine diesel, agricultural diesel, things like that. So you guys can help your customers out more if you were looking to get more computer systems and things like that. You've heard of Diesel Laptops. Check out their stuff there. Also go to, like I said, we're going to raffle one off at dieselgaragefoundation.org to help somebody out with the scholarships and to give somebody the computer. We just want to help give back. So if you guys are interested, we definitely really appreciate all the support. And that's the best of what we got going on right now, and we're getting ready to get out another scholarship, so that's pretty cool.
good, very good, very good. Thank you, sir. Therefore, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other last minute questions or comments? We're at about almost our time. Any questions, comments? Diesel Master Course, I guess I'll make one. I'll be in Denver next week. If anybody's still interested in signing up, we got a few seats left. Diesel Master Course, definitely, it's a week training, some hands-on, but definitely want to, share that with you. And also remember, we got our on-demand courses on powertraintraining.com. So if you haven't learned the LM2, like to see a presentation on the L5P that I discussed today, we do have those uploaded up there too as well. So if you'd like to watch them. And if you want to see some of my boring videos, you're welcome to see them at Diesel Talk on YouTube. Diesel Talk with Tony Salas, you're welcome to see too as well. So with that, anybody like to have any last minute comments, stuff, anything else? Okay. Matthew, get with Lee. If not, I will call me later and I'll see. Lee, is there any way you can send me that video? Because some guys already text me they want to see it, including Matthew. So if you can send me an email at tsalas@dieseltg, that'd be great.
Yep. Tony, it's a huge file. Can you take a 20 meg file?
I don't think so.
That's
well, in
the
that
challenge.
case,
Go ahead.
what we'll do next week, and Matthew, why don't you hold out to next week, because I'm going to see him next week. Am I going to see it next week, Lee?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll see him. I'll get it up to load it for you. So
And Tony, I can put it on a thumb drive and you can put it on your computer.
that's what I'm saying. So I'll figure it
Yep.
out.
All
I'll
right.
find the shared drive. So
All right.
with that, gentlemen, Matthew, any other last minute? You're cool. Thank you for your input. Carl, nice seeing you, buddy. And you guys all take care. Guess we're done. So with that, till next month, I'll send out a date there for the August date for the Diesel Driveability Roundtable. Got other stuff we were going to be covering, so I'll be working with some of you guys. So with that, get out of here. Go back to work. Go work on some trucks or go eat lunch, whatever it might be.
Thank you all.
You all take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.
Tony.
Thank you. Take care.